Hey everybody, how's it going today? So this is a long video that I was supposed to do this weekend, but it got a little hectic, a little crazy. So it's Monday, but this is the weekend video because all week we did 3 short videos on to use a pick or to not use a pick, okay? So the first video we did last Monday was very short, but for beginners, and if you're kind of like maybe intermediate or you just want to do something different, this is going to be a good communication for you. I started using a pick, okay, and everybody's different. So it may feel uncomfortable to you, or holding the pick may be the easiest part of playing the guitar, because obviously the fingering, that gets to be the tough part, how to play these chords and where to play them and which bar chord or major, minor. But the pick, you're either going to use it to strum the chords, or you might start playing, some So there's all different thicknesses when you come to the pick. There's like light, medium, and heavy. And so you just experiment, go to the music store, go online, order a different variety of picks. And it's just, a good way to start, but it may not be the way you want to end, okay? Because you may like how using your fingers to pick may be a better way for you. You may want to use your thumb. But when you're using a pick, most of it you're going to hold most of the pick and covering it up pretty much, and just kind of leaving the tip available. You're not going to like be holding it up here or up here. You're going to be holding it down, okay? Now I just do it naturally, that it comes between my thumb and my first finger. Some people maybe want to experiment trying using the middle finger and a thumb. Maybe you're more comfortable with index finger, little finger. But, for most people, it's a combination of the first 2 fingers, okay? And, just striking the notes, we're playing, you're hitting all strings, or you're just playing notes, and then you're picking up and down. And that's just, comes with time. You can just pick down all the time if you want. Or you can pick down and up. So experiment, get the 2 to 3 different thicknesses, okay? Start strumming chords, holding it in a way that feels comfortable to you. I think I do use it more just with the index finger. Maybe once in a while I feel like my middle finger is coming on part of the pick. And you just got to keep doing it, because everything is awkward feeling when you're first playing the guitar. And you just have to kind of keep at it, and you're resting, depending on the size of your guitar and whether it's acoustic or whether it's electric. You're resting your arm in a spot where you are picking kind of in the middle of the pickups, or closer to the neck, and you can get different tones where you pick, okay? Like down here, it's more of a trebly sound. If you come up near the neck, isn't that a big difference? Very different. Let me just do a C chord. So experiment where you're picking the strings in the relationship to your pickups, or if you have a hollow body and you have a hole here, you could do the same thing. You could pick farther down towards the bridge or farther up towards the neck, and you may be getting like a whole different sound, or softer. Near the neck. Very bright, very trebly. Something to think about. So, Video number 2 last week, we got into a little bit of this. So, what am I doing? Maybe this is, I'm not a finger picking expert, but for this song, I had to learn to do a little bit just with fingers, okay? So, this is Blackbird by the Beatles. If Paul McCartney was here, he'd probably say, well, you're not playing exactly right, but who cares? It sounds pretty good to me. And what am I doing? Well, you've heard of double stops, or you've heard of octaves. An octave is basically playing the same note, but it's on 2 different strings. There's double stops that are you're playing a harmony. It could be the root and the 4, root and the 5. It's 2 notes together. So we're doing the same thing, but they're stretched out over the neck of the 6 strings, meaning that this is in the key of G. But when I start going up the neck, I'm playing here a C note, okay, and an E note. So that's for G, G, A, B, C, that's the 3rd, and then I'm going to the E, so it's the 3rd and the 5. If I'm talking about the G scale. If you're just looking at as a double stop, C and an E is basically, you could say, a root and a 3rd. So I'm playing a note on the A string, and I'm playing a note on the B string, okay? But while I'm playing those 2 notes, I'm using 2 fingers, so I'm going to call it hybrid, okay? I'm not doing classical where you can use basically 3 fingers and your thumb, okay? I am just using my thumb, and I'm using my index finger, okay? And that's what's getting me when I'm going up to that note, up here F, and then I'm using the A. And then I'm coming down to an E, and I'm coming down to a G, and then going back down to the 5th fret. So what I'm trying to tell you, I am using 2 fingers. I'm not using a pick, okay? And for this type of strumming, for that song, I'm using 2 notes, but then what I'm playing, say, I'm using both of these fingers, and I'm kind of strumming along on the other notes, except the E note or the E string. So I'm strumming on that B and on that G. I'm strumming also with the 2 fingers on the middle strings, okay, not the E string that much, except when I'm hitting the G. I'm hitting. And so when you go to other chords, you can do the same thing with these 2 fingers. You have to use your 2 fingers and just see if you can pick the other strings. You can do it with open chords. That's just a hybrid type of picking. I'm using 2 fingers, okay? Now, when you get into classical, and you're going to be able to utilize picks, you're going to utilize your thumb, your index, all your fingers, okay? This is something you can explore on your own because I am not an expert on that. But if you want to experiment utilizing your other fingers, basically your thumb would be utilizing the E and the A string. Your your other fingers would be for the lower strings. Meaning like if you can get your index finger to work, that would be more for the E string. If you can get your other two fingers to work, they would be more for your D, your G, and maybe your B string. And you can even practice maybe hitting 4 notes together with all 4 fingers. Something like... So the combination of using 2 fingers or using all 4, not the index, you can really get a lot of good different tones or different sounds and combination of notes, because you're not playing all the notes, you're hitting different ones. You know, we might be doing a root in a third, or a root in a fifth, or a sixth, or a minor 7. So, we're going to get a couple bonuses. What else can you use? Well, you can use, some people use a thumb pick, okay? A thumb pick is just a different way, you know, that you don't have to hold a pick. Just another way that you can do that. And then for the hybrid picking that I was telling you about, if you can do that with a thumb pick, you can do it. You can use the thumb, you can use your index finger, and then you can play the other fingers. Okay? And I mentioned classical because sometimes if you really get into classical, you have other picks that will go on the other fingers that other guitar players, you know, they like. And I've never used these, so I'm not going to try. But if you're getting into classical music and you're going to be having your thumb, whether it's just a flesh or you thumb pick, you're going to use these other fingers with picks. So I haven't used these before very much, but maybe one day I will. Other people will just use your thumb when they play. That's an option. Wes Montgomery, he liked to do his octaves, you know, with his thumb. Combination of playing a couple notes, but you're kind of having to mute the other strings by having a different finger touch those strings. So you're playing all 6 strings, but you're not, you know, you're not getting any buzzing or any notes coming that you don't want. Takes a lot of practice, because you can do octaves on any, you know, any of a grouping of strings that you want. And then it takes a little more time to mute the ones that you don't want to, you know, hear, you know, the sound of. The last tip, or tip number 5 in picking, is the guys that like to use their fingers, okay? Playing solos, or, you know, with their... Derek Trucks, I think he uses his index finger. Maybe he uses the first 2 fingers. But when he's not playing slide, you would see it. He's just strumming the note, picking the note with a finger, okay? Now, when I'm doing that, I can actually add my thumb into there. Other guitarists that like to just use their finger. It's just a different sound than using a pick. Listen to Matteo Mancuso. He's an Italian, phenomenal guitar player, and he uses almost every finger, maybe mostly his index and his middle, but he's like amazing how he'll pick. It's just the way he learned from the beginning. He'll pick the notes, play the fastest licks all over the neck. It's just unbelievable. I'm not even going to try because it's just I haven't accomplished it yet. But you can use your two fingers. You can actually add the third finger in there for solos, and that's just another option. So I hope this lesson would help you figure out what way you want to go. Maybe you want to just try all different ways. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of each. Jazz, you might want to use your thumb more. Rock, you might want to use a pick. It's just a lot of leeway to put together your own style. We'll have a new lesson for you this coming week. See you next time.